Hey, Roger here. Our biggest online event of the year is about to happen where we take a volunteer, put them in the hot seat, build the retirement plan on air, and then share the results with you live. This is all coming soon, and you can register for Retirement Plan Live at livewithroger.com. How do you tell someone you love, especially a parent, that they need help? How do you actually have that conversation? Well, that, my friend, is what we're going to explore today on the Retirement Answer Man Show. Welcome to the show. My name is Roger Whitney. I am your host, and this is a show dedicated to helping not just survive retirement. We truly believe you can rock retirement by having the right little conversations about life and money. And at some point, on some level, you may need to have a conversation with a parent, your elder, one of the leaders of your family, telling them that they got issues and they may need some help. How do you navigate that conversation? So we're going to explore that today. But first, let's talk about what exactly is a caregiver and why that's important.
Huh? What does that mean?
When we think of a caregiver, we think of a medical professional or someone helping out in the home. We don't really think of it as being a family member, as being you. Because a caregiver isn't just a nurse or a doctor or a physical therapist. It can be you or some paid helper who just regularly looks after someone that's sick or a parent or a disabled person. And who will they be? Well, most of the time it is going to be you or a family member. More than 65 million people, about 29% of the U.S. population, provide care for chronically ill, disabled, or aged family members or a friend in any given year. And they spend on average about 20 hours per week. That's according to the Caregiving in the United States, National Alliance for Caregiving. 23% of family caregivers for loved ones are about 5 years or more report that they have their own health issues, again, from the same source. Caregiving can be that nurse that comes in and works with, in this case, an elderly parent. But caregiving also is bringing food by, helping them pay their bills. It can be very small things that are everyday activities that they can no longer do. These are the interdependent stage of aging. When you have to take those things over because it becomes self-evident that they need the help, how do you actually have that conversation? Well, we're going to explore that today. If you would like to receive links to articles that we mention and special resources, checklists, and worksheets related to the topics that we talk about each week, you can get those in our 6-Shot Saturday email. We send out one email a week with a summary of the show, and that's a great way of getting you exclusive resources, and you can sign up for that at rogerwhitney.com. I recall a few years ago, my brother-in-law flew down from Minnesota to spend a weekend with his mom and dad, my in-laws. And obviously it was for visiting, but the main purpose for coming down was to help his mom and dad organize things and have the conversation about getting older, checking to see where the documents were, getting all those documents organized, understanding the financial situation, putting into place a password manager so they could have one password where everything could be accessed, letting him, in this case, have access to that password. And as the oldest child, he was always the one that was most responsible about all this stuff, but also a little bit of an organizational geek. And he was the right person to come and have that conversation with his mom and dad. So that's one type of conversation when there isn't an issue with taking things over that we should have earlier than later. And this creates a dialogue. And so what Kevin did in this instance was he created a dialogue with his mom and dad about issues of organization and what was in place. And that set the foundation for having lots of little conversations over time as they've aged. Very smart thing to do. And one central tenet of agile retirement management is this idea of little conversations. It applies to everything. I used to say it's a secret to a good marriage. We want to have a lot of little conversations, whether it's with our spouse, ourselves, our children, our parents, about sometimes somewhat uncomfortable things. And it's best to have those little conversations when they're not really an issue, as Kevin did very wisely, which was, well, if something happens, mom and dad, where are the powers of attorney and who is named? Having that conversation before that kind of issue is even on the radar is a lot less uncomfortable because it's just hypotheticals. We're trying to be good planners. And I think they appreciated that at the time. And that set the stage for a lot of those little conversations. That can be very different than having a big conversation, which is the alternative when nothing is ever addressed. And then something big is right around the corner, say moving into a nursing home, and then trying to have all those conversations without that foundation when there was a period of lack of stress. So the more we avoid these little uncomfortable conversations, the more that can build to be a much bigger conversation overall. And central to agile retirement management is having lots of little conversations so we can identify risks and opportunities that we can take action on incrementally so it doesn't all seem so big. And that can be applied into a lot of areas of your life. So the conversations that we're going to talk about today are a little bit more about the bigger ones, but I think it's important that we acknowledge that the more we can start a dialogue early, either with each other, husband and wife, about ourselves, or with our parents, the more we're going to set the stage for better conversations later on. So what are some of the things that we're going to have conversations about? Well, when we think of our parents, the big one that is really internal, especially with parents, is driving. Now, I don't think my father-in-law listens to the show, but he scares me on the road. You can see his and my mother-in-law's driving abilities deteriorate. And at some point, and I don't know how you figure this out, it's going to get to the point they really shouldn't be on the road. And we heard David's story of his father driving to the hospital last week. Driving is a conversation that may have to be had. Now, there are plenty of 90-year-olds that are on the road and safe drivers. So as we know, this aging process is different for everybody, but driving could be one. Financial disclosure is another one. Starting to get access to, okay, where are the accounts? How are they titled? Who can have access to them? What are the passwords? Those are conversations that are going to need to be had. Cognitive questions, when you start to notice memory issues or recall issues, forgetfulness. Bigger conversations like housing and moving into an assisted living or downsizing from the house that you grew up in. Maybe conversations about maybe you shouldn't get on that ladder and put up your own Christmas lights anymore, of that sort of can-do attitude that our parents can have. These are some of the conversations that we're going to need to have. And the more we can have those little conversations earlier, just to talk in hypotheticals rather than imminent, hey, we got to deal with this, the better it's going to be. So what are some tips for some of these difficult conversations? Oh, wait, before we get to tips, let's talk about some of the issues of having some of these conversations. Well, think about it. For us, we as the child, we see the issue and we love our parents and we want to help them. And we think of them like we think of us. Although we notice these issues, it's very difficult for a human being to put themselves into someone else's shoes. Here I am, I'm 53. My in-laws are in their late 70s. I don't know what it's like to be in my late 70s. I don't know what it's like to see what's happening in the aging process. I mean, I have my relation. I look in the mirror, I see the bags under my eyes every now and then, but that's different. That kind of aging is different. So some of the issues in having these conversations are that we approach them as something that we need to solve, and we approach them from our perspective, not really understanding or appreciating fully their journey. And this is where communication can really fall apart, right? And even in everyday life with spouses and whomever. Everybody is on their own journey. They're dealing with their own issues. They have, what's that quote? Where they have their own internal battles that we don't know anything about. And so if you're aging, if you're in your 80s, what could some of those issues be? Fear? Losing that self-determination? Fear has got to be something that everyone grapples with, especially as you age. I mean, I'm 53, I deal with it. Ego? I mean, I'm pretty agile guy. I can do a lot of things pretty well. And as some of those things deteriorate, that impacts my ego, my sense of self. Confidence in my ability to make a decision. I see myself getting forgetful enough. That's going to hurt my confidence. Privacy. What do you mean? I don't share my finances with my children. I'm not going to talk to you about that. Privacy. Embarrassment. I don't want to show my financials. I did a lot of things wrong. I don't want my kids to see that. Or maybe embarrassment about personal stuff. I don't want to share that with my kids. My medical stuff, that's, ew. No, they're my children. I don't want to be a burden to them. I think these are some of the issues that we need to be aware of, whether it's having these little conversations or these larger conversations, is that they are on a journey that we can't quite relate to. And the more we can be empathetic to that and understand that, the better that communication is going to happen positively. So what are some tips? I got a lot of these from research, caring.com and other resources, and we'll have links to those in 6-Shot Saturday. Number one is choose the right messenger. Who should be the one to have particular conversations? So I'll use my in-laws, and you always pull from your life, your personal experience, right? My brother-in-law, as the eldest child, was the one to have the financial and organizational conversation because of the relationship he had with his dad and his mom and the fact that he was an organizational geek and still is. But my wife and her sister are the ones to have some of the health conversations with their mom. And it could be an aunt, it could be a cousin, but there's going to be someone that each of your parents listen to a little bit more. And so we want to choose the right messenger. Another tip is little conversations and dialogue is much, much bigger than big conversations in all sorts of areas of life, but especially here. And one way to do these is to do hypotheticals. So a good example is when I'm coaching a client and we're talking about the future, pinning someone down on a decision or something puts a little bit more pressure on the answer. Whereas if you use hypotheticals, it relieves some of the stress. Like a good example would be, what should you do about long-term care insurance? Well, that's a hard decision. There's a lot of pressure there, a lot of things that need to be added up. But if you ask, well, okay, we've looked at all that, but hypothetically, if you did know the answer to this, what do you think that would be? Just hypothetically. That kind of little change takes a lot of pressure off of the questions. Well, mom or dad, if you had an accident and you needed us to step in to help make decisions, then where would we find the documents? Hypothetical. Not mom and dad, you could get in a car wreck tomorrow and I'm going to have to make decisions. Show me where the documents are. That's immediate. That's stressful. Like, what? It could happen tomorrow? But hey, mom and dad, hypothetically, if at some point you were knocked out cold and I needed to make some decisions for you, I know you have that power of attorney. Hypothetically, where would I find that so I could get that for you? That takes a lot of pressure off that. Another tip is to test the waters. If you're worried about, say, your parents driving, one way to approach it would be, Dad, I was driving behind you the other day. Dude, what's going on? You almost hit the curb. Or you did hit the curb. Are you okay? Are you still okay to drive? That's a little bit different than a much softer approach, a more dialogue-based approach is to tease out the answers. Hey, Dad, how's your driving? How's your driving been? I know she got a few dents. How's your health been? How's mom doing? Just test the waters with little things. As you prepare to have some of these discussions, do some homework. Learn as much as you can about the issue and gather intelligence about what the issue is. We'll stick with driving as an example. You may have your anecdotal things that you've seen, but maybe reach out to the neighbors. or reach out to friends and ask them what they've observed about driving. Do some research on elderly and driving. Come with some solutions and resources that you can help frame it so you have the facts. This can be really hard. And I have personally not had to have these conversations with elderly parents. The only people I've ever had in my periphery that has had to deal with this are my in-laws, and I'm not in the position to have most of those conversations. So I want to make that clear. I just have done some research on this, but I have had to have uncomfortable conversations with clients many times, and these same types of tips apply. You want to have a dialogue. You want to talk in hypotheticals and give people mental space to think and tease out their real answers rather than trying to pin them down, because nobody likes to be pinned down. And then you always want to be able to come with as much information as you can and some solutions and resources to help figure out what little baby step you take first, right? Let's take the car example. And this is where the value of little conversations can come in. Hey, how's your driving? If you're early enough in that dialogue, it could simply be helping them upgrade to a car that has a lot more technology to help them not hit the curb or to automatically brake. Help them find ways to continue that path, and then you're acknowledging it and that dialogue continues. I did some research and there were some other tips from professionals that I want to share. First, what comes from geriatric communication expert David Solie. He has a book called How to Say It to Seniors. I haven't read it, but I think all the reviews I've read, there are a lot of good pearls of wisdom in there. And he notes that adult children want to solve problems and move on because we're busy. We got life and it's uncomfortable to begin with. So we come in as a solver and move on. And their parents, however, want foremost to maintain a sense of control and dignity in a season marked by many losses, not just the losses internally, but with friends and work and purpose and isolation. And so there's easily can be a disconnect there, and we got to be respectful of that. And then Ken Robbins, a geriatric psychiatrist at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, he says, those with whom you have a relationship in which you can be straightforward and they welcome your ideas and feedback. And then there are those who tend to be more self-conscious, private, and don't welcome this kind of discussion and may even find it somewhat insulting. And each of us are going to have to navigate those relationships and what kind of relationship and what kind of person we're dealing with in having these discussions. Some other tips from professionals are don't give advice, guide them to answers, listen all the way. Again, going back to David Solie's comment of a lot of adult children just want to solve the problem, and listening and allowing the parent to have their voice and to speak it and to really hear it is important. Another tip when we're speaking, I think, to elderly parents is we got to remember they're aging. And one article I read said you want to speak in a lower voice. High pitches can be harder to hear. You want to speak in a lower voice. You want to have short, focused sentences. You want to be very clear in what you want to communicate. And this is important. Essentially, you got to be more direct. You don't want to dance around the edges because it's uncomfortable, because then they may miss the message. And then obviously you want to choose the time and the place. Bring it up gradually before you have a particular talk. Places, a little background noise. Again, the hearing issue. You want to have it someplace comfortable. Outside is a great idea. I would suggest not in the home. Have it someplace where it's neutral ground so you can preserve the home and the relationship that you have there. And one final tip is, and I believe this is from Ken Robbins, the psychiatrist, is you want to be empathetic, but you don't want to be condescending. Imagine there's a line there that we all have to walk. So you imagine we're trying to be empathetic, not condescending. We're not sure of what kind of person we're dealing with. You have all this other baggage of being the child. You can see how this can be very difficult. And hopefully David's suggestion last week, and I liked the way he approached it when he was navigating the conversations with his dad, In driving, the one I remember specifically was he really loved his car, even just sitting in the car, even though he hadn't driven for years. And I don't know if David approached it this way or his dad found this for himself, but he was more willing to give up the car, the house, moving into the facility because he knew he was doing it for his wife. And I think that was very wise, however it came out. And I think it's a great lesson for us to learn of helping people identifying what's important to them. In this case, it was doing things for his wife, helping them find their solution as to how they're honoring, in this case, their wife by making this choice. And the more we can help facilitate and lead them rather than tell them, I think the more comfortable it is for them, the more empowering it is for them, and the more we can preserve relationships. So now we're going to go switch gears here a little bit and talk with a recent Retirement Plan Live alumni about where they are in their journey. So a little over a year ago, we did a Retirement Plan Live. We had Emma on the show, and we'll link to the episodes that were her case study and talked with her about where she was at. She had a husband that was very sick. And although in this conversation, we don't explore the caregiving, we did during that period of time. And we talk a little bit about it here. So we wanted to get an update from Emma, where she is at on her journey and how life is going. So here's our conversation with Emma, our most recent Retirement Plan Live alumni. And this will give you a look back as we gear up for doing a new case study in January. Hello, Emma.
Hello.
So last we chatted, you were navigating taking care of your husband and trying to lean into creating adventures for the both of you via RVing and exploring. And we worked through a very high level framework of what is possible and thought of some risks and opportunities. That was about a year ago, right?
Yeah. It was at least a year ago.
So where are you now? How are things going? Give us a little bit of your journey.
Yeah, where I am now, the kind of short statement is that my husband unfortunately passed away in July of this year. However, going through all those scenarios really helped an awful lot because I think that we were more willing to take some of those opportunities that came along so that we could have some adventures. And we really had to just roll with the punches as each in treatment, out of treatment, whether it was had a lot of other physical situations and stuff like that, and really dialing in on important stuff in our lives.
So he passed away in July.
Yes.
So here we are in December. How are you doing?
It's a crazy roller coaster. Obviously, I think going in, all of us knew the risk, especially with pancreatic cancer. However, there is still that part of, I think, me, all of us, that thinks, oh, it's not going to happen to us. Every time a new hope comes up, then you think, it's like that time when somebody swerves and you miss them and you think, that's it. I'm good. I didn't have the accident. But yeah, it's a pretty tough road. And I do have to say, I'm extremely fortunate that I am retired so that I can take some space to process all that and spend some time.
Yeah. In some ways, you're right. You always think it's going to be okay. But I imagine it helps a little bit just knowing the journey he was on. I recall with my mom with cancer, we always had the hope, but at least you saw, you knew that they were dealing with something. It wasn't totally out of the blue. That'd make it easy.
That's very true. We had lots of not just opportunity for adventures and different experiences, but also we had the opportunity to spend an awful lot of time together. And really, not a lot of people are able to know that that's a definite possibility in that. It's really strange to say, but in a lot of ways, you enhance your relationship because you are talking about the possibility of death and what may happen.
Yeah. And for me, it's like the trick is to have those conversations without the thing that makes it focused, right? To have them when you're not dealing with that. Well, we're sorry to hear that. Now tell me, obviously you've taken some time. It's only been since July. When do you start thinking about Emma 2.0? It's sort of a whole new journey that you're on. Did you do that quickly, or have you even done it yet? Or are you still just sort of gathering your sea legs in this new reality?
Yeah, I am still gathering my sea legs, and I tell people all the time, I feel like I'm living two lives at the same moment in time. The life that I lived with my husband, and then also my next journey. And so it goes in and out of thinking, oh, this would be a great thing to do next, or I'm really interested in that. And then going back to, and being more focused on what was and the adventures that I wish that we could have experienced together. So it's kind of both right now, and it's still definitely getting sea legs for sure.
Okay. So I would call you flat-footed. You're not on your heels, but you're not on your toes yet.
Exactly.
As you think about Emma 2.0, is there any wisdom that you have from, you talked about the things that the two of you wish you would have done, maybe trips you would have taken or retiring early. Are some of those pointed of, wow, we could have done that? Does that change how you're going to deal with Emma 2.0 in terms of saying yes to things?
Oh, I think it definitely does. It puts things more front and center because it is very realistic to me now that not only life can end, but it also can become very limited in a very quick fashion. And so, yeah, there's a lot more wisdom going in saying it's a lot easier to pick out the things that are important because of the wisdom that I've gained over being able to do that in a real fashion.
I want to make sure we restate that we think about get it done before I pass. But you said something really important of that life can become limiting much quicker than you expect. It's not just simply passing, it's not having the ability to do things.
Exactly. There were a lot of limiting things that my husband experienced, and that was not just during chemotherapy, or there were a lot of other things. And I've known a lot of other people that have, well, I'm someday going to do this, but they have ended up in a situation where their life is very limiting. They cannot participate in that anymore.
So I know that you are a mountain biker.
Yes.
Last time we chatted, I think we had a goal of buying a mountain bike. Did you actually do that?
Yes.
So
I did buy my
Tell me what
bike.
it is. Tell me what it is.
It's a Santa Cruz 5010. It's awesome.
What kind of components? Do you know?
It's dual suspension. And one thing that I really, really love about it is exactly how it corners. It feels so fun when I am on it. It feels kind of like you're a kid when you could really watch me go fast on my bike or something like that. And it climbs well, and it's a great bike. It's the first time that I've had a dropper post, and there's a trail that's not far from my house. And really the only reason why I climb it is so that I can go down.
And where you live, it's important to have a dropper post.
Yes.
Is it a 29er?
No, it's not. I tried several 29ers, and it just always felt too big for my size. And so I ended up with I think it's 27 and a half.
Okay, the middle one. So we're geeking out here a minute. I'm sorry, folks.
Yes, exactly.
Well, awesome. Well, let me ask you this question when it comes to this saying yes to things, right? You're in your 60s.
Mm-hmm.
You are a mountain biker.
Yeah.
On one hand, you have making sure you say yes before you're limited to be able to mountain bike, because that's a different kind of cycling.
Exactly.
Experiencing someone passing so close to you and so recent, for some people, they would react by taking less risk. I think of mountain biking risky. I mean, I've knocked myself out. I've fractured bones and things like that.
Yeah.
How is it that you're leaning into things that are quote unquote risky, fun activities rather than protecting yourself? How do you grapple with that?
I think how I grappled with that is trying to put systems and stuff in place that will help me out in the eventuality that something happens while I'm out mountain biking or any other time. And then taking advantage of those opportunities that come and really deciding, hey, everything is a calculated risk, but is the opportunity and the experience, does it hold a lot more value for me than the risk? And so far, that's working. I'm very fortunate in the fact that it's not that I'm never afraid, but that part of it, especially with mountain biking, it just doesn't ruin my life.
Well, I love that you're leaning in to adventure in life. I think that's really wise, and I wish you all the best. Thanks for sharing an update on where Emma is.
Yeah, thank you.
On your marks, get set.
And we're off to set a little baby step that we can take in 7 days to not just rock life, but rock retirement. And the resource of the week, and I've mentioned it already, is a book by David Solie on how to say it to seniors, closing the communication gap with our elders. You can find it on Amazon. We'll have a link to it in 6 Shot Saturday. And it may give you some tips to navigate starting those little conversations. Hey, you know what? Holidays are a great time to do that. So last week we were talking about Christmas gifts. And so I have an idea for you if you or someone in your life is an Uber planner. And this is a great thing to have in a household. And it's by New Year. I'll put the link in the website, but it's New Year, NEU year.net. And they have a number of organizational things. But the thing that I love is a 6 foot long, 3.5 foot tall calendar that goes on the wall. I have one in my office, and I know a number of people that use them. You can see the entire year in wide vision, I guess. And it's a great way to use a dry erase and schedule out your year. I've had my 2021 calendar up for about a month and a half now, and I'm slowly filling in. Right now, I have all the themes for the year, monthly themes for the year for the show, and I'll be filling in some other things. But if you know somebody that's an Uber planner, it's a cool gift to give. It's a huge calendar, and it'll make the geek in your life a little happier. I hope you have a wonderful week, and I will chat with you again next Wednesday. Hey, it's time for that all-important disclaimer. We so appreciate you listening to the show and love your questions and love the teaching that we're able to provide here. And actually, it helps us too. But remember, you're not our clients.
Not love it if you took advice from us on the show.
We would not love it if you took advice from us on the show. Realize it's helpful in education. Talk to your legal advisor, your tax advisor, or your financial advisor before you make any decisions.
We appreciate you joining us today for this episode of Retirement Answer Man. Be sure to visit rogerwhitney.com/answers to access the Retirement Answer Library with over 30 checklists to help you make the most of the only life you have. Remember, you have more power than you realize to create an amazing life starting today with Retirement Answer Man. The opinions voiced in this material are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. All performance referenced is historical and no guarantee of future results. All indices are unmanaged and may not be invested into directly. Have a wonderful day.